Today's episode of the Duck Zone 503 podcast, we're going to talk about the strengths, weaknesses, and storylines for each Pac-12 team heading into 2023. I'm your host, Dominiqk Peterson. This is the Duck Zone 503 podcast where we talk all things Oregon football. Let's get into it.
Welcome to the Duck Zone 503 podcast, talking all things Oregon football with your host, Dominiqk Peterson. Let's go.
Welcome into today's edition of the Duck Zone 503 podcast. Today, Wednesday, August 9th, 2023, and I am happy to be with you. I come with some very good news to start today's show, Duck fans. Commitment alert, people. Here it is. Oregon has flipped blue chip top 100 prospect Dakoda Fields from USC. He's a four-star cornerback out of Gardena, California, a place where the Trojans usually lock down pretty hard when it comes to recruiting. Good to see the Ducks go ahead and go into Trojan land once again and steal a big-time prospect from the Trojans. He had been committed to the Trojans since June 5th, but after Oregon's Saturday Night Live camp on July 29th, it seemed like momentum started to swing the Ducks' way. Fields has very good speed, long arms, and an athletic body frame that allows him to be very physical with wide receivers. Standing 6'2", 185 pounds, Fields is ranked number 83 overall and number 9th among cornerbacks in the 2024 class, according to 247 Sports composite ranking. And look, guys, we all know Dan Lanning is an elite defensive recruiter. Just look at the class he's got committed on the defensive side of the football already. Here's a tweet from Ducks Cruton on Twitter showing all the recruits. Ducks Cruton's a great guy to go follow on Twitter for Ducks Recruiting. He's showing all the recruits, the defensive recruits that Dan Lanning's put together for this 2024 class so far. So it starts with four-star defensive line Xavion Sims from Oklahoma, four-star defensive line Tion Gray from Missouri, four-star edge Jackson Jones from Arizona, four-star linebacker Dylan Williams from California, four-star linebacker Kamar Mathudi from California, four-star corner Ife Obadegwu from Maryland, teammates with 24 four-star quarterback Michael Van Buren as well. Then we got four-star corner Dakoda Fields from California, added on, flipped from USC, the new commitment. Four-star safety Aaron Flowers from Texas, and four-star safety Kingston Lopa from California. So a lot of Texas, a lot of California in there, a couple other states mixed in. This defensive class for 2024 is already coming together, and we got a nice 6-7 months until this recruiting class is all the way over. So another notable news. After Tuesday's practice, it was announced that Oregon track star Micah Williams has joined the team, and Dan Lanning is going to give him a chance at wide receiver. So Williams last month put out a tweet indicating that he was interested in joining the football team, and it appeared that Lanning is going to go ahead and give him a chance. Now, it's been reported that, he's been on the team for a while now since fall camp started, but he didn't know if he wanted to stick with the team, but it's looking like this is a move that he's going to want to stick with. Lanning made a statement after practice with the addition of the world-class track star saying, quote, Micah wanted to play football, and we wanted to give him a chance to see if he can. It's been a long time, but he hasn't really played since his freshman year in high school. But you can't coach fast, and he's fast. We'll see what he's able to do out there for us. So, obviously, this is a player that comes to mind. Devin Allen, was very successful here at the University of Oregon on football and track. Track star Michael Williams, world-class speed, something you can't coach that. That just comes naturally. Just ups the speed. If you're having a roster graph, right, overall 99 is the best. Overall 60 is the worst. Your roster speed overall just went up closer to that 99 rate. So it's going to be fun where Micah can fit. I expect him to really just help out on special teams and maybe returning kicks is his thing. He'd be a very dangerous kick returner. With guys like this, I kind of worry with protect the ball as a kick returner, but this is why you're here at fall camp to get those things through. So Oregon adds 4-star defensive back Dakoda Fields, flipping him from USC. And then we're also getting information that a track star, Oregon, Micah Williams, is on the team now. So that's good to hear. Okay, so guys, we are currently at 788 subscribers on YouTube. Cannot thank every single one of you enough. Okay. And we're also just launched on Spotify. So if you're listening to this on Spotify, if you're listening to this on YouTube, need you guys to go hit that subscribe button. Not only that, go tell your friends and family and everybody you know who's a Duck fan to come follow and subscribe the Duck Zone 503 podcast. All right. That gets that. Go subscribe. We're growing by the bit. We need 1,000 subscribers out. All right, let's get to the meat and potatoes of the podcast today. Like I said, we're going to be looking at the strengths, weaknesses, and storylines for each Pac-12 team heading into 2023. But before we do that, I'm going to get a quick drink of water. So if you're listening to the podcast and you don't hear me for a second, that's why. Water is essential in a podcast. All right, let's get into it. So, weaknesses, strengths, storylines for each Pac-12 teams. I thought this was going to be a fun segment for everybody to listen to. Did I say fun? Fun segment for everybody to listen to. So, I'm going to go ahead and start with the team that everybody wants to hear. Let's go ahead and start with Oregon. Okay, so we got Oregon. 2022 record, 10-3 overall, 7-2 in the Pac-12. Dan Lanning is entering his second year as the Oregon head coach. Went 10-3 last year. The Ducks were absolutely awesome last year. First-time head coach Dan Lanning. A 10-win season off the bat, 5th in passing efficiency, 10th in scoring offense, and number 1 in sacks allowed. The Ducks will look to replace a few pieces up front, but they do return a lot of star power at the skill position. Quarterback Bo Nix returns for his second year at Oregon. This Ducks offense looks to be dangerous once again this year. Now, the big question for the Ducks is going to be the defensive side of the football. Okay, the Ducks allowed around 27 points per game last year, and quarterbacks threw all over them. That must improve if the Ducks want to reach a conference title or more. Now, the strength of this team is obviously the return of Bo Nix. Okay, you get Bo Nix back, and look, who would have thought that Bo Nix is going to be a projected late first rounder 3 years ago when he was at Auburn? I mean, you would have called me crazy, and that's where he's projected. He's a projected late first rounder, and man, oh man, how quickly a narrative after an impressive season can change for you. But let me tell you, he hit on 72% of his passes for 3,593 yards, 29 touchdowns to go along with 510 rushing yards and 14 scores on the ground in 2022. So that's a big strength for the Ducks coming back in 2023. Weakness of this team, secondary play. This is no secret at all. Oregon allowed 270 passing yards per game. That was good for a number 110th in all of college football. Simply not good. Now, Triquez Bridges is back after making 49 tackles and 3 picks at one corner spot. Oregon also adds key transfers such as Kyrie Jackson from Alabama, Nico Reed from Colorado from the transfer portal. So those are going to be big time additions. I've been hearing some good things. Every time I hear an interview, I'm hearing about Kyrie Jackson a lot. I've heard good things from the media about Nico Reed. He's coming from Colorado. We've seen what Christian Gonzalez, who also came from Colorado, did with his career coming to Oregon. A lot of media pundits are saying if Christian Gonzalez was to stay at Colorado, that he probably wasn't going to have as good as a draft projection as he would if he was on the Oregon stage. So Nico Reed comes here from Colorado, Kyrie Jackson from Alabama. We all know the kind of recruits Alabama's got and the kind of program they hold their standard to. So getting a guy from that type of program is going to do nothing but delights for this Ducks program. Safeties Evan Williams from Fresno State and Tyson Johnson from Ole Miss are also huge additions to the secondary at the safety positions. Evan Williams, brother of Bennett Williams from last year. Tyson Johnson would have led the Duck tackles last year if he was on the team. So big additions. Hopefully these transfer portal additions can shore up some things in the secondary for the Ducks. All right, guys, let's go ahead and move on to Colorado. So 2022 record, 1-11, overall 1-8 in the Pac-12. Head coach Deion Sanders enters his first year as the Buffalo's head coach. Coach Prime Deion Sanders takes over the Buffaloes after a very disappointing 1-win season, but he did not waste no time telling his players exactly how he felt about their performance and his future plans with his new program. Coach Prime is there to do exactly what head football coaches are supposed to do. He has to do one simple thing, guys. Win football games. Win football games. That's the one simple thing that head coaches are tasked with. And Coach Prime is the dare to do that. So when he tells his players, when he's coming with his quote unquote baggage and the transfer portal is open for them, he means just that. And I have no doubt that Coach Prime has an eye for talent. He got to work quickly overhauling more than half of Colorado's roster through the transfer portal. And a strength for this team, I got to say, the instant impact from the big-time transfers, okay? He reached in the transfer portals. He's got some of his former players. Let's talk about them. Let's start with quarterback Shedeur Sanders. This is his son, played at Jackson State, put up some very good numbers. Defensive back Travis Hunter. They're both from Jackson State. These guys were stars there. Now, are they going to be able to perform that way in the Pac-12 is a big question, and a big question everybody's going to be watching for. They also add freshman Kwamani McLean, who all look to make instant impacts on the field for the Deion Sanders-led Buffaloes. A big weakness for the team. Now, I got to say, you overhaul your roster, you bring in talent. That's a good thing within itself, but there's a good and a negative to everything. And I think doing that, overhauling a roster majorly, is a giant lack of chemistry, giant lack of camaraderie. Now, you can try to do that in fall camp as much as you can, but let's be honest, when 80% of your roster is gone from last year, it's going to be really hard to really deeply connect with guys all around the football team. And, how do guys from last year's roster really take to these new guys coming in thinking they're just automatically getting their starting spot? And they might under Deion Sanders, some of these guys. How do they take that? How does this team really gel in year one is going to be a thing to watch. And also the defense, madly awful for the Buffaloes, historically bad. So don't get me wrong. I don't think it's a bad thing that he overhauled the roster, but it is a bad thing within itself. The Buffaloes ranked near the bottom of all of college football in all major defensive statistics. So they lost a lot of most of their productive players from last year's defense as well to the portal. So there's a lot of questions still for this Buffaloes team heading into 2023. All right, let's go to the next team. Stanford in 2022, they went 3-9 overall, 1-8 in the Pac-12. They're now entering the post-David Shaw era. They got a new head coach, Troy Taylor, entering his first year. Troy Taylor was pretty good at Sacramento State, okay? He won 3 Big Sky championships in his 3 seasons there. Now, I get it. It's the Big Sky, Sacramento State, not a big league. But look, you go there in your 3 seasons, you win 3 Big Sky championships. I mean, that's pretty impressive. But it's going to be tough for Taylor to during this rebuild with the Cardinals. This roster really got depleted through the transfer portal. Key players for the Cardinals, such as leading tackler, linebacker Levani Dumais, went to Utah. Edge Stephon Heron went to Louisville, and safety Jonathan McGill transferred to SMU. Those are some big-time players for Stanford last year that, in a down season were positive production players in the era of transfer portal. These guys are gone. So that's very tough. The Cardinals certainly didn't add a lot of talent either. It's a very tough school to get into academically, so it's not easy for them to add talent. But let's talk about some strengths for these guys, okay? So solid pair of running backs to build around. E.J. Smith is the son of former NFL running back Emmitt Smith. So E.J. is going to be a damn good shifty back. So E.J. had an electric start to his season last year, but missed the last 10 games of the season due to an injury. So really didn't play a lot of the season, but he had a pretty good damn start. Casey Fillikins, the other running back there, replaced Smith's role as a starter and led the team in rushing with 478 yards and 4 scores. So overall, I believe this is a rebuilding year for the Cardinal, but those 2 guys right there are definitely 2 guys to keep an eye on for the Cardinal. So I think a weakness for the team, for the Stanford Cardinal, obviously was the offensive line. Last year, the offensive line has to be better. When you think of Stanford, right, especially as an Oregon fan, you have memories of those prolific offensive lines from the past of the Cardinals shoving our Ducks around, right? But as recent years, the level of production just hasn't been there for the Stanford offensive line. Last year, Stanford's pass protection was really, really bad. And now the line has to start all the way over with big losses to the transfer portal and to graduation. So looks like a tough season for Stanford moving forward here. Taylor, year one, don't expect much from the Cardinal. They might actually be the worst team in the conference this year. All right, let's move forward. Oregon State, 2022 record, 10-3 overall. Can you believe that? Oregon State had a 10-win season, 6-3 in the Pac-12. Head coach Jonathan Smith is entering his 6th year in the conference, 26-31 with the Beavs all time. But look, guys, he inherited a real bad program. I don't think Jonathan Smith's major program turnaround at Oregon State isn't being talked enough, in my opinion, in the media. I mean, where's ESPN, where's all these major conglomerates talking about this? I mean, he inherited a program that had only 7 wins in 3 seasons. Let me repeat that for you. Jonathan Smith, when he came into the program, he inherited a team that only had 7 wins in 3 seasons, guys. And look, he reached a total of 5 wins in year 2. Now the Beavers have back-to-back winning seasons. That's the first time that at Oregon State since 2013. 10-win season last year in year 5. First time that has happened since 2006. So I am very excited to see, what these pesky Beavers are going to do in year 6 of Jonathan Smith, who has this team feeling pretty damn high heading into 2023. And look, Beaver fans, you guys need it, man. You guys need these winning seasons because, look, out of 105 years, this is a fun fact for you guys, out of 105 years of playing college football, the Oregon State football program has 42 winning seasons. By comparison, Oregon has 60 winning seasons, Washington has 74, and USC has 81 total winning seasons. So, Beaver fans, come on. And 2023 looks prime for a winning season for you guys, most definitely. Jonathan Smith has established a culture of toughness and resiliency and has his Beavers surging with a high-powered offense headed by top Clemson transfer quarterback DJ Uiagalelei. Now, I think the strength for this team, you got a very good offensive line mixed with that physical run game. Duck fans, we know this. We see this in full force last year when the Beavers ran the ball 13 straight times down our throat for a score in just one drive. All they did was run, and they scored the ball. The Beavers' O-line are not to be taken lightly, to say the least. The Beavers' offensive line is headed by first-team All-Pac-12 players Joshua Gray and Talise. And behind that beefy O-line, you got cowbell running back in Martinez, who is also a first-team All-Pac-12 player as well. Now, the big weakness for this Oregon State team, which is a big X factor for this Beaver team if they want to be a good team to a championship to contender team for the Pac-12. They need more consistent quarterback play. When when the Beavers woke up that college football world, and let me ask you, when do you think that was? When did people start waking up and realize the Beavers are actually pretty damn good? I would say when they were that close, and if you listen to the podcast, I'm putting my fingers really close together. When they were that close to beating USC, they were this close to beating. They're that close to beating USC. They lost that game by 3 measly points to Caleb Williams and the Trojans. 17-14 was the final score of that game. The 4 interceptions for the Beavs were a big problem. I assure you, if the Beavers did not have 4 interceptions in that game, they beat the Trojans. And I think that's when that final score came out and the college football world was looking at these final scores, the week was over. People were like, what? The Beavers almost beat the Trojans? What happened? And you go look and look at it. The Beavers just turned the football over. And if they had more consistent quarterback play, they would be where they need to be. Not very good quarterback play last year for the Beavers overall. But they addressed that problem by landing former 5-star and number 2 overall recruit DJ Uiagalelei out of Clemson. But look, fair, DJU had his fair share of inconsistent play at Clemson as well. There's a reason why he's transferring from Clemson to Oregon State. So the big question is for the Beavers, will he actually be the guy to get them into the upper echelon of the Pac-12? That's a question we're going to have to wait and see. All right, guys. So let's move it on here. We're going to go to Washington State here. Washington had a 2022 record of 7-6 overall, 4-5 in the Pac-12. Head coach Jake Dicker enters his third year at Washington State. I would really call it 2.5. He's 10-9 there overall. You got to remember he entered kind of halfway through his first season. So it's really his second year and a half at Washington State. But so far, he has his team playing in the middle of the pack, what you kind of expect from a Washington State team. But the big question for him is, for 2023, is can he take his team to that next level? You guys all remember Mike Leach, RIP the Pirate. When he had the Cougars contending for that upper half of the conference when, they were tied for the Pac-12 North in 2018. And look, Washington State fans have yet to see their team win a conference title since 2002. 21 years since the Cougars have been conference champions. They're also 2-6 in bowl games since 2003. They joined Cal and Oregon State as the only programs to have yet to make an appearance in the Pac-12 championship. So can Coach Dicker get Washington State over that hump? They almost beat Oregon last year. You remember that game. They were contending. That's a storyline I'll be watching. Watch out for how sneaky good this Cougar team is. Now, the strength for this Cougar team, which was a big strength last year, and I think they'll keep it up this year, is red zone scoring and red zone defense. Last year, the Cougars were very effective on both sides of the ball in the red zone. With quarterback Cam Ward on offense and a speedy front seven on defense, I expect that to continue this season. Red zone touchdowns for Washington State last season on offense. They were 35 of 48. 48 trips in the red zone. They scored 35 touchdowns. 73% of the time they're scoring a touchdown on you. On the other side of the ball, defensively, they held their opponents to only 56% of the time to score a touchdown in the red zone. That's damn good. 56%. So both sides of the ball, these Cougars are pesky in the red zone. A big weakness, okay, who replaces their top wide receiver from last year? Okay, Washington State is obviously a very admirable school to go for pass catchers because of the heavy air raid system they run. But with the transfer portal era in full effect and given Washington State isn't the biggest brand in college football, when they produce some star wide receivers, they can be easily plucked from their program if you're a smaller school. And that's what happened with Dejon Stribling. He's off to Oklahoma State. Stribling caught 95 passes for 1,073 yards and 10 scores last season for the Cougars. So a big loss there. Who's going to replace that? They bring in a wide receiver named Kyle Williams from UNLV. Williams caught 117 passes for 156 yards and 9 touchdowns over the last 3 years for UNLV. Williams will look to take over that wide receiver one position this year for the Cougars. Now, will he match Stribling's numbers? That's the question we're going to have to see. But I'm pretty high on the Cougars this year. This is a sneaky good team. All right, let's move on. Arizona State, 2022 record. They were 3-9 overall, 2-7 Pac-12. Really bad year for the Sun Devils. Head coach Kenny Dillingham, Oregon's former offensive coordinator, enters his first year as the head coach of the Sun Devils. So after the controversy over alleged recruiting violations, the Herm Edwards era is over. And here comes a 33-year-old young guy, Kenny Dillingham, to lead the Sun Devils to greatness. Like I said, he's the former offensive coordinator and quarterback coach. That's a big thing last season for the Ducks. Dillingham rose up quickly through the coaching ranks, making stops at Memphis, Auburn, Florida State, and Oregon before taking this head coach position this last offseason. So I'm genuinely interested to see where the young Dillingham takes the Sun Devils program. Everywhere he's been pretty wildly successful. And I know some of you Duck fans don't want to hear this, but I think that Kenny Dillingham loss, okay, I know you guys don't want to hear this. I think that loss is going to sting a little more than people think. I'm very high on my Kenny Dillingham stock. I really like his offenses. I really like what he did in year one, and the way Bo Nix look as his quarterback coach. And you look at Kenny Dillingham when he was at Auburn. Now, he wasn't calling plays at Auburn, but he was Bo Nix's quarterback coach there as well. His freshman year and last year, those are Bo Nix's best career numbers when Kenny Dillingham is his OC and quarterbacks coach. So that's a big worry. It's a big worry. But moving on here, the strength for the Sun Devils. Elite freshman quarterback Jaden Rashada looks to take the keys of this Dillingham offense. So Rashada had originally signed with Florida with that famous NIL deal. I'm sure a lot of you seen the headlines. That was only to disappear after he got out of his scholarship to go to Arizona State. And that all made headlines. It was a big controversy. I don't want to cover too much of that. You guys can go read into that if you want to. But yeah, man, this guy was a big sought-after recruit. The 6'4" freshman has the arm and athleticism, I think, to beat out Pine, the Notre Dame transfer quarterback. Drew Pine also comes in there. I think this freshman has what it takes to beat that guy out. If not day one, though, I think he'll eventually get his opportunity. So that's something I'm excited to watch. Some of you Duck fans might remember that the Ducks were in Rashada's recruitment as well. We never really led for him, but we were in there. We were in there, and there was a lot of NIL talk for him. A lot of that. We're talking millions of dollars talk for that kid. So watch out. Dillingham landed a big one there. A big weakness for the Arizona State Sun Devils, I say they got to create more turnovers on defense. Most definitely. Arizona State defense came up with only one fumble recovery and 12 takeaways overall. Only 12. That's not good enough for a defense that's seen a total of 33 takeaways over a span of 2 years, 2020 and 2021. Not good enough. Going to have to get some more takeaways. Okay, guys, so we're going to continue on with the Duck Zone 503 podcast here. But I have a very special message for you guys today. We're going to continue on here in a second. What's going on, guys? It's your boy Dominiqk Peterson, host of the Duck Zone 503 podcast, where we talk all things Oregon football. Very excited to announce we just launched our very first merch store. Men's and women's t-shirts, hoodies, sweatshirts, stickers, phone cases, mugs, and cups are all sold at duckzone503.creator-spring.com. If you want to go grab one of those today, that's duckzone503.creator-spring.com. Store link will be in the description below as well. Right. Yeah, we're back. So that was a quick advertisement. Just dropped some merch. Guys, if you guys want some merch, as you heard, go click in the description below. All right, guys, let's go on here. Let's move on to Arizona. So Arizona, the Wildcats. They were 5-7 overall last year, 3-6 in the Pac-12. They're getting a lot better. Jedd Fisch enters his third year, guys. 6-18 overall. I get it as an Arizona, but look, he's getting there. He's building them up. It feels like, Arizona, I get it, really hasn't been relevant since 2014. I remember them battling the Ducks in those conference championships. But maybe things will start to soon change after beating out the Ducks for a couple of huge recruits over the last couple of years. I got to say, there's been a few recruiting battles where Arizona sneakily came in there and plucked them away from the Ducks. Most notably as recent, Elijah Rushing, right? So Jedd Fisch has his team improving by leaps and bounds from year one to year two. Solid recruiting and key transfer portal additions seem to be doing the job for him. Arizona closed this year strong after winning 2 of their last 3 games. They beat UCLA. We all know how pretty good UCLA was. They won 8 games. And then they beat the rival Arizona State. So that was awesome. I think the big strength for this team, they got a deadly quarterback wide receiver combo. Quarterback Jaden DeLora returns for his second season at Arizona. I cannot talk today. I'm sorry, guys. At Arizona, where he had his best season yet in 2022. DeLora threw for 3,685 yards, 25 touchdowns on 8.5 average per pass. All career highs from DeLora last season. Wide receiver Jacob Coing finished 4th in the Pac-12 in receiving last year with 1,034 yards paired with 7 touchdowns. So Jacob Coing, DeLora, big-time quarterback wide receiver combo, but I'm not done. They also have another guy. Freshman Terrell McMillan had an outstanding year one with the Wildcats. Freshman campaign put up 702 yards, 8 touchdowns, average 18 yards per catch. That was number 1 in the conference, guys, as a freshman. Major deep ball threat is McMillan. You guys, some of you Duck fans might remember the Ducks were in it till the very end for McMillan, another recruit that Arizona plucked away at the last second, and he eventually chose the Wildcats. So look, if the Wildcats can keep plucking these key Oregon recruits away, it wasn't just an Oregon target that this guy was. These big time recruits, they're slowly building something. I think that, through the transfer portal, they got Delora. Jedfish is building something sneakily good. But what they're going to have to do if they want to get even better and make a bowl game is definitely improve that defense. That defense was one of the worst in college football. I'm going to just lift off some stats for you from the Wildcats defense last year. Opponents' points per game, 37.3. 125th in college football. You're almost letting teams score 40 points per game. I don't care how good your offense is, how good your wide receivers are, how good your quarterback is. If you're letting teams score 40 points per game on you, it's going to be hard to win some games. Look at this one. Opponents' yards per game, 473. Again, 125th in college football. Opponents' third down conversion percentage. They were allowing 48% to opponents to convert on third down. That is crazy bad. That is crazy bad statistic. The defense must improve if they want to contend with the top half of the Pac-12. They got the offense to do it. Now that defense is going to have to show up for Jedfish. All right, let's move on. Okay, guys, I hate to do this. Yeah, we got Washington up next. I know. I shouldn't even do it right. But let's talk about it. All right, Washington, 2022 record. They were 11-2. 7-2 in the Pac-12. Head coach Kalen DeBoer enters his second year after a very impressive 11-2. And do you know this? This really impressed me after researching this. So I'm doing notes, right, for the podcast. I like to, make the show run pretty smooth. I'm looking up Kalen DeBoer's record as a coach. He's entering his 8th year overall as a head coach. He is 90-11 as a head coach. I had no idea that this dude was like that had that good of a record as a head coach. 90-11. So that is pretty impressive, I got to say. I don't like the Huskies, but, man, DeBoer, pretty good hire. Year one under Kalen DeBoer started off with a bang from a team that finished 114th in total offense, bring up to the nation's second best offense in the country, only under Tennessee. They only finished under that. Washington finished with the second best offense in the country. DeBoer had this team on absolute fire last year. Led by Indiana transfer quarterback Michael Penix, Washington put together the nation's #1 passing offense in the country, passing for 369 yards per game, almost 400. The 11-win season was a memorable one for the Husky fans as they beat the Ducks on the road for a big-time statement win. We all remember that. I was there. Not one that, I like to look back on, but you got to give it to them when they win, right? They only won 5 in the last 20 years. Let's give it to them, right? But also, only the 12-0 1991 National Championship team and the 2016 12-2 college football playoff-bound team won more games. So respect to Washington. This is one of Washington's best all-time teams, and they're going to be returning a lot of production in 2023. I think the strength team is obviously returning the nation's #1 passing attack. As I mentioned before, the Huskies finished with the nation's #1 passing attack and #2 overall offense. They returned quarterback Michael Penix and his top 2 weapons, Romo Doomsday and Jalen McMillan. I think the big weakness for this team is the defense has to force more turnovers. I'm telling you, if the defense can get the back to this offense, I think you're looking at a special season for the Huskies. The Huskies had 3 interceptions against Kent State, but only had 4 the rest of the way. So they also had 2 fumble recovers against Stanford and only 3 other recoveries against everyone else. So against the bad teams, they're returning them over, but against the good teams, they weren't really doing much. So if Washington defense can force more turnover and get that elite offense the ball back, it could end up being a very, very special season for the Huskies. Now, let's go ahead and move on here. Enough Husky talk. Utah. We're moving on to Utah. 22 record. They went 10-4 overall, 7-2 in the Pac-12. They won the Pac-12 championship for the second straight year. Head coach Kyle Whittingham enters his 19th. Can you believe that? 19. You don't see this in college football a lot. 19th year as the Utes head coach. 154 wins, 74 losses all time. Head coach Kyle Whittingham has the Utah Utes sitting as the king of the conference after being in the Mountain West just 13 years ago. The Utah Utes are now 2 Pac-12 defending champions and coming off of 2 Rose Bowl appearances. It's getting to the point where the success for the Utes is almost expected now, guys. It seems like almost every year the media focuses on USC. They're always talking about Oregon. They're always talking about Washington for their success. And now they're getting all the preseason hype. They give Coach Prime in Colorado more airtime and coverage than Utah gets, to be real with you. And Utah just sits there silently. They're sitting there silently in the bushes, stalking their prey, the rest of the Pac-12 like a lion in the jungle, because they're the king of the jungle. They're the lion in the jungle. They're the silent ones that nobody talks about. And when they're ready to pounce, they come out and pounce for that championship. Until further notice, guys, Utah is the king of the Pac-12. I'm sorry to say it. I'm a Duck fan, but at the same time, man, somebody's got to knock these guys off, right? The big strength for these guys over the past years has been their home field advantage, and they're going to have another big-time home field advantage every year. The Utes are 26-2 in home games over the last 5 seasons. Let me repeat that for you. The Utah Utes are 26-2 in home games over the last 5 seasons. Note, Oregon plays Utah in Utah October 28th, 3 nights before Halloween. The Utes have only lost 2 games over the last 5 seasons. Can you believe that? So the Utah has not lost at home since 2020. Utah has not lost at home in front of fans since 2018, because you remember there's no fans allowed in 2020. The Utah game will be Oregon's toughest game in the schedule, in my opinion. Now, some might say USC, some might say Washington. I'm going to go and put my money on that Utah game will be very, very tough. So the weakness for this team, for the Utah Utes, I would say is their pass defense. Okay, Utah cornerback Phillips III entered the 2023 NFL draft after starting 31 career games across 3 seasons. Phillips earned unanimous All-American honors in 2022 after a very impressive season. Utah will have to replace that production in 2023. The Utes, even with Clark Phillips, allowed 236.5 passing yards per game, which was number 81. Not godly awful, but still 81 in college football. Whittingham wants to improve on that. And also allowed 7.9 yards per pass, number 102 last season. So even with Phillips, they were fairly average on defense last season, and they're going to lose Clark Phillips now to the NFL draft. So who's going to step in that secondary for the Utes is a pretty big question for them. All right, let's keep it going, guys. UCLA 2022 record is 9-4, overall 6-3 in the Pac-12. Pretty damn good season for UCLA and head coach Chip Kelly, who enters his 6th year as the Bruins head coach. 27 wins and 29 losses for Chip Kelly. You know, it was pretty slow start for Chip, but he's getting things going. And, you know, Chip Kelly, man, every time I hear his name, you just get the nostalgia from the classic days, man. Us Duck fans love us some Chip Kelly. Why wouldn't we, right? He was so amazing on his 4-year run here at Oregon, 2009 to 2012. It was great. 46 wins, 7 losses here at Oregon, 3 top 4 finishes, 2 Rose Bowl appearances, a trip to the national championship. What more can a fan ask for in such a short stint, man? I really wish this guy would have stayed at Oregon. But look, for UCLA, when he went to UCLA, it took a little bit of time for things to get rolling for him. But, you know, over the last few seasons starting quarterback Dorian Thompson-Robinson, a.k.a. DTR, has led the Bruins to some winning seasons. They won 9 games last year. USC and UCLA are leaving for the Big Ten soon. Same with Oregon and Washington, with the most recent news. This is their last year in the Pac-12, okay? A lot of teams, this is last year in the Pac-12. They're going to need all the momentum they can get before these teams go. So, including UCLA, because I think out of all the teams effort, I think UCLA is the least talked about. Everybody talks about USC, Oregon, Washington. Nobody's really talking about UCLA. So they're going to need some momentum heading into the Big Ten. Strength of the UCLA Bruins, I think their linebacking corp is one of the best in the Pac-12, if not the best. Darius Mausu is a huge middle linebacker sitting right there in the middle of Kelly's defense. He's put 361 career tackles with 12.5 sacks and 29.5 tackles for loss in his 3 years at Hawaii and 1 season with the Bruins. So this guy returns big time middle linebacker. And then, okay, this is going to be a difficult name for me to pronounce. So bear with me. Oluwafemi Aladehu. Cho Bryant Strother and John Vaughn. So there's some tough names for me to pronounce. Sorry about that, guys. So Olufumafi. Okay, I'm not even going to try it again, but you heard the names. Are some names to look out for on the Bruins defense. I mean, these guys have guys all over the place, and their linebacking position group is outstanding. A big weakness for this team that stands out like a sore thumb is who replaces DTR, okay? You're trying to replace 69% completion rating, 3,154 yards in the air, and 27 touchdowns, and 9 touchdowns on the ground. This guy was a dual threat quarterback, and he had a lot of years under Chip Kelly. It's a lot of years without having a new quarterback, and now they're finally having to break one in. So that's what DTR did all last year. You're replacing that production. It's not going to be easy. Look, but I do not have one doubt that Chip Kelly can find him a quarterback, and I think he has a few options to work with. He's got Ethan Garbers and Justin Martin. Kent State transferred Colin Schlee also enters the mix. And, of course, we all know 5-star Dante Moore. Everybody's going to have their eyes on him because he's the most notable. He's the new guy on the block. He's the Oregon commit, 5-star, highest-rated quarterback ever to commit to Oregon, who flipped to UCLA after Bo Nix chose to return to Oregon. And he went to go ahead and play for the UCLA Bruins. So all eyes on him. I don't know if he'll start week 1. We'll see if Chip Kelly chooses to do that, but that's going to be a big-time storyline for them. Okay, let's go. Keep it going. UCLA's rival, USC. And becoming, looks like a heated rivalry with Oregon, too, over the last few years. USC went 11-3 last year. They went 8-2 in the Pac-12, a very good season for them. Head coach Riley's entering second year with the Trojans, 11-3. Last year, 7th overall year as a head coach. He is 66-13, considered one of the best head coaches in all of college football. In Coach Riley debut, he led Heisman Trophy winner Caleb Williams and the Trojans to one of the nation's most electrifying offense to watch in all of college football. The Trojans finished off 2022 with a trip to the Pac-12 title game and a trip to the Cotton Bowl against Tulane. While it didn't end the way USC fans wanted, they lost both those games. They lost the Pac-12 title game and a Tulane. It definitely looked like USC is back on the right track, I got to admit, okay? When all these blue bloods like Texas, USC, we all make fun of them when we're like, we're back. All their fans say we're back. Well, this time for real, it looks like they're on the right track to be back. And, the obvious strength for this team coming into 2023 is you bring back Heisman Trophy winner Caleb Williams, and he's got skill positions galore all around him. The Heisman Trophy winner Caleb Williams had an amazing finish last year. 4,537 yards passing, 42 touchdowns, and only 5 interceptions. Considered the number 1 draft pick coming in next year. Could he get another Heisman? I wouldn't doubt it. This guy is special. Considered a Patrick Mahomes type quarterback. Williams returns to USC for another year, looking to repeat his success. He will be paired with elite wide receiver Dorian Singer, who transferred in from Arizona. Singer was a top receiver in the conference, finishing with 1,105 yards and 6 touchdowns last season. It appears that elite USC offense isn't going anywhere, guys. Now, a big weakness for USC, though, is this rush defense must get better. Trojans were absolutely atrocious against the run last season, allowing 160 yards a game rushing on 5 yards a carry on average. I mean, that will absolutely kill you on defense if you're giving up a first down every 2 plays on runs. And that's what the Trojans were doing. And we've seen it against Utah and Tulane. They were exposed there. Now, a big pickup for these guys is Georgia defensive lineman Bear Alexander and Oklahoma State linebacker Mason Cobb. Should be some big-time additions for the Trojans on defense this year. Bear Alexander is a big boy up front that a coach like Lincoln Riley, even in his times at Oklahoma, didn't necessarily have. So that's going to be a big thing to look for. Will those major additions launch USC's defense and their team overall into a college football playoff? We're going to see. But those additions are pretty key for them. Okay, last but not least, we got the California Golden Bears, who finished 4-8 overall, 2-7 in the Pac-12. Another slouchy season for the Golden Bears and Justin Wilcox, who enters his 7th season there. 30 wins, 36 losses. Wilcox took over the Golden Bears in 2017 with a good resume and reputation. And it looks, starting off, he had a couple of winning seasons at first, in his first couple seasons. But this Wilcox train is kind of slowing down. The Golden Bears have gone 10-18 in the last 3 seasons. That's just not good enough. Wilcox is entering his 7th season to turn things around, and he better. Because if he doesn't, guys, I would not be surprised if he's out the door sooner than later. I really hope he doesn't. I really hope he doesn't get fired because, look, he's a former Duck. I always I pull for success for former Ducks. But look, it hasn't been necessarily impressive there. A big strength for these guys is their linebacker corps, okay? They got a great linebacker corps there. Former Washington transfer Jack Sermon stepped in last season and finished with a team high 104 tackles. Florida transfer David Reese is a 5-year veteran who missed almost all of last year. He put up 322 tackles in his previous 4 seasons, so they get him back this year. The Cal Bear linebacker group will be the strength for that football team, as these two are going to be tackling everything in sight, no doubt. Now, one big weakness for these guys is the defensive pass rush up front for the D linemen. Only 19 sacks last year. Oregon finished with 18. This is something we got to improve too. Cal Bears finished with 19. One of the worst in the conference. They must get better at getting after the quarterback, especially when you're in the Pac-12 with all these NFL draftable quarterbacks. You got to have a D-line and a front seven that can get after the quarterback. The defensive front didn't add much either. The Cal Bears, we talked about USC, what they added. We talked about Oregon, what they added. The Cal Bears did not really add much up front. So I'm not sure how much they improve. Do they develop? Does Wilcox develop a special player up front for him? He's a defensive-minded coach. I wouldn't be surprised if he does. I'm going to be pulling for the Cal Bears because, look, Wilcox is a former Duck. I don't want him to get fired. It's looking like he's on the hot seat. Okay, guys. Well, I appreciate everyone for tuning in once again. Look, I'm your host, Dominiqk Peterson. This is the Duck Zone 503 podcast. We talk all things Oregon football. If you haven't already, guys, hit that like and subscribe button down below, guys. Need you to hit that like and subscribe button. Tell all your family and friends about the podcast. Really appreciate you guys, the viewer. This podcast is powered by you. As you know, I'm not backed by any big-time media corporation. None of that. This is independent podcast, the Duck Zone 503 podcast. Really appreciate everybody for tuning in. We're going to have some big-time preview and prediction stuff coming up. We got positional previews. We got schedule predictions coming up and a lot more. So make sure you're tuned in and subscribe down below. As always, guys, I'm your host, Dominiqk Peterson. This is the Duck Zone 503 podcast. Go Ducks. I'll see you in the next episode on Monday. Episodes every Monday and Wednesday. Tune in weekly. Go Ducks.